Well, good morning. Can you listen well? I think you are. Well, it's a great pleasure having you once again here, to all the students of the first semester. And it's a great pleasure for Anna and me to welcome Jason Goulah. Jason Goulah, as you can see there, is a professor and director of the Institute for Daisaku Ikeda Studies in Education in DePaul, the College of Education of DePaul University in Chicago. It's the same institute that we have here in this faculty, but better. I think it's the institute that we would like to be, or we would like to become in the future. So it's really great for us having the opportunity, the first time that he comes to our faculty, and the first time that he comes, I think, to Madrid. And it's also a great opportunity that we wanted to share with all of you, so that you can know him and know his work, and above all, how he works. So I just wanted to say a couple of things about him. He's a prominent figure in the realm of soccer education and human education. And he has dedicated his career to explore and promoting educational philosophies and practices that prioritize holistic development of individuals. That's something that you should be familiar with. And the cultivation of compassionate global citizens. Through his work, he has delved deeply into the principles and methodologies of soccer education that maybe you are not so familiar with, but probably Anna mentioned it in the class. And the pedagogical approach inspired by the teachings of the Japanese educators Tsuneseburo Makiguchi and Daisaku Ikeda. And he has shed light on the transformative potential of soccer education in fostering not only academic excellence, but above all, ethical leadership, social responsibility, and a deep sense of interconnectedness among individuals and communities. Okay, I wanted to show one of the three main works for me of his his last books, at least. The last one is Hope and Joy in Education. It's a wonderful title. I think that's the kind of works that we need in these hard times that we are going through. TESOL and Sustainability, teaching English for students that are from abroad, right? And sustainability. I should mention that he's an expert in linguistics and cultural studies. He speaks fluently Japanese. That's something that I am amazed of. And he's not a psychologist, but most of his work deals not only making more known the philosophy of Daisaku Ikeda or Makiguchi, like this fair work, but also how to use it, how to work with those ideas in the current 21st century. His key ideas, for me, I think the human education, how important it is in order to foster holistic development, the value creation, and the global citizenship in order to bring social equity and justice to our communities, and how those ideas, so important at the beginning of the 20th century, are so relevant right now. And this is more or less the formal presentation and brief that I wanted to provide. Okay, but this is a picture of when we met. Yes. When we met in Japan, in the city of Toyama. It was in, I think, in 2019, 19 probably, yeah. It was in a special event with Japanese teachers. It was really a wonderful moment to also see how Jason was capable of talking in Japanese with that audience. It was something that really surprised me. I think that in a less formal way, I should say that his sense of humor and his humanity is great. It's one of the things that I value the most. He's a really good companion when you are abroad. And he's a really fast thinker when talking, and I think that we had the opportunity to see that. But as all of you have made a practice with Anna, I think, drawing yourselves as teachers, did you do that? Do you remember? Okay. I asked them to do the same to these people. And the 4 Japanese teachers. And okay, this is a little game here. You should try to choose or to predict or to know, to wonder which picture belongs to him. Because I think that a picture says more of a person that sometimes that everything that you can write in a book or in articles. So maybe you don't remember, but if you had to predict, well, not predict, to say which one is his drawing and compare with your own drawings of yourselves as teachers.
I can't believe you have this stuff.
Yeah, I have it. Which one do you think belongs to Jason? For example, can you raise the hands, those who believe that is this one of the sun? Okay. Who thinks that is that one with the tables in a square, 2 people, and this with the different trajectories? Okay, and that one with the 3 different scenarios? Okay, it's funny because it's not easy to identify, right? It's not so easy. But there is only one. Do you remember which one it is?
I think so. Do you want me to say?
Yeah, please.
I think it's this one.
Yeah, exactly. It's that one. It's that one. And I think the drawing depicts one characteristic of Jason that I want to really emphasize, that is not so formal as before. And it's his dialogical way of working. He works through dialogue. He works in an educational context when you don't identify who's the teacher. You know who's the teacher because he says, this is me. But if I don't say who's me, nobody will know. And it's something typical in collaborative context and collaborative learning. And that's one of the things that I would like to say that we share, that emphasis in collaborative and dialogical practices. And, well, this is the introduction to Jason, but the best way of knowing him is through direct experience. So please welcome Jason, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
The students.
So it's a great pleasure to be here. I was not expecting a formal kind of presentation where I'm on a stage and you are in an audience. I was hoping it would be more like a classroom where we could engage in a dialogue. So maybe I will step down, but I know that they're recording. So I also am cautious about the microphone, but can you understand my English? Is that okay? It's an American accent. It's, not handsome like Alejandro, and, it's very nasally. I'm from a part of the United States near Niagara Falls. Do you know Niagara Falls? Near Canada? This is where I'm from. Very nasal kind of accent. So if you go back to your drawings. So if I were to redraw this right now, the desks would not be in a square, but in a perfect circle. That's actually my most preferred way of engaging. Because in a circle, everyone has equal power. Everyone's ideas are just as important as everyone else. But sometimes a square can be a rectangle, and so some are a little bit farther away, and so the distance matters. And I got that actually from your psychology students. So maybe you've studied Lev Vygotsky. Do you know Vygotsky? Vygotsky, we would say in English. Do you know? Vygotsky? Do you know Vygotsky? Do you know him? Yes? Yeah. and maybe Bakhtin. These are two Russian thinkers that say the way we come to understand and develop is through dialogue, where two different people are creating new meaning in that space in between. And this, for me, was a really powerful idea of what education is. On one hand, education is about learning content and memorizing, but that's a very narrow understanding of education. To me, the bigger definition of education is being and becoming, always becoming. We are always developing. This is the idea, and that happens often in the classroom, but just as much outside the classroom. We're being and becoming with our parents, we're being and becoming with our brothers and sisters, with our friends, we're being and becoming in the lunchroom, in the cafeteria, in the library, in the museum, on the playground, in the department store. Every space, if we're attentive to it, is about being and becoming. So for me, that's the core educational perspective. And because of that, I started to become interested in the ideas of Daisaku Ikeda, or Ikeda Daisaku in Japanese. Just by show of hands, how many of you have studied or learned about Daisaku Ikeda? Maybe if you took Anna's class, no? Are you surprised, Anna? You're surprised that no one's raising their hand. So if it's okay, I would like to share a little bit about Daisaku Ikeda. Is that okay or no? Yeah? How many of you are interested in these ideas of Daisaku Ikeda? Do you know you have an institute here that studies his ideas? Or no?
They are knowing now.
By show of hands, how many of you know that, how do you say it in Spanish?
It's more or less the same as yours.
It is?
It's joint mixed Institute of Educational and Developmental Education.
Okay.
Daisaku Ikeda.
For Daisaku Ikeda.
It's Education and Developmental
Okay.
Education.
So Daisaku Ikeda just passed away last year in November, but he was born in 1928. And before coming in here, well, where to start? I don't want to give a formal presentation. I actually think a formal presentation for you is kind of boring to listen to one person just talk. So I'd like to have a kind of Q&A, and if I can, maybe go down, yeah.
Let's go there. Do you want this?
I might use that, yeah. So, oh, that's loud. Okay, maybe now you're awake. You know, what year are you? You're mostly what year students? First year, second year, third year? First year. So you just came out of high school. Like in the spring, most of you. And are you also first year? No, you're first year. So, is this too loud? He's going to bring it. Sorry. I'm going to fix it. Turn it down. It's a little loud, right? Yeah. Okay.
Now.
Okay. Oh, okay. You know, maybe you can tell me why education? Why are you interested in being educators, teachers for little children? Why? What makes you want to do that? Just raise your hand. Who feels like they want to share? Yeah.
Probando. Oh, wow. Vale.
I don't speak any Spanish. I don't speak
Sorry.
Spanish. Yeah.
So I had a very bad teacher when I was a little kid. So I just thought that if I could become a good teacher, I would help a lot some other kids and childs. So that's why I choose it.
What is your name?
Guillermo.
Guillermo. And why were they bad? What made a bad teacher a bad teacher? I mean, we probably know. We all probably have experiences of bad teachers. Maybe one or two examples.
Just wait a little.
Yeah, I will
Se
wait.
dice que no, joder, que no te comprenden, que no. Okay, so I think they were like bad teachers because they they don't understand the feelings of the class and they just sit there, explain the lesson and just go like I thought, in my opinion, that they were there just only to make money and all that. Like they were not enjoying explaining the lesson. And I think that's a very important thing that a teacher should have, like enjoying when you explain something.
Yeah. How many of you had experiences like Guillermo, where the teacher just kind of taught and they almost didn't care for you, the person? Did you have this experience or no? Or maybe see this experience? I had this experience. But then, how many of you had the opposite? You had a teacher who somehow really connected with your heart.
I also had it,
Yeah.
and I thought, like that is my referente, my reference.
Yes.
Like I have both of them, and I didn't understand like if you can be the good teacher, why are bad teachers
Right.
in the school? If you can be one of them, why choose it the other path? So like I have both, and I think like I want to become one of the greatest one.
Nice. Good. So I'm the same. Thank you. I had really bad teachers, but I also had really, really profoundly impactful teachers. Teachers who became like my parent. I did not have a father growing up. So it was just my mother, my older brother, and me. But then a teacher became very much like my father, and then I started helping this teacher and became really close. I think if there's anything you take away from my visiting or from the Institute, is that we are trying to cultivate a sense of education as a profound experience of what it is to be a human being. The fullness of our life is not just our mind. That matters. That's really, really important. We develop the mind, thinking, but also we have to develop the heart. This also matters. And teaching to address the mind and the heart is a skill, but it's also an art. You know, how many of you do art in your free time? Music or painting or drawing or dance or poetry or literature, these kinds of arts. You could see my drawing, not very artistic, but the act of connecting with different people means, and I know this is what Alejandro does in his classes, trying to recognize the unique individual characteristics of each person, not treating everyone as the same, because everyone's different. Different experiences, different background. So for me, one of the best, there are many good educational philosophers, but the best maybe for me is Daisaku Ikeda. And it sounds like many of you may not know him, but he was a Japanese educator, peace builder, and philosopher. He was a writer and a Buddhist leader. Before we came in here today, we looked at the church on the campus. Have you been in this church, this museum? Did you see this? In the United States, it's rare to have a church next to an education college. They typically are not side by side because a campus and a religious building are separate. But my university also has a church right next door. I teach at the largest Catholic university in the country. I am not Catholic, but the university is a Catholic university. And most students are not Catholic, and most faculty are not Catholic, and most staff are not Catholic at this university. But it's the largest in the country, and it's maybe the 8th largest private university in the country. But this Catholic university created this institute to study Daisaku Ikeda's ideas. So I'll share a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you if you have questions about it. So I'm going to share his major idea, and then 4 kind of key elements of that idea. So I'll go through them quickly. And the reason I bring up the church and the university at your campus and my campus is because for Ikeda, his perspective on Buddhism and education share a common element. And it's actually in the character for teaching, kyo. Maybe you have nicer writing than I do. Maybe you can write it than I do. Mine's very ugly writing. Kyo, yeah. Yes. And then we can write kyo with the line over the macron over the O. Yeah. So this character means teaching. And then if you write bukkyo, shukyo, and then kyoiku. Oh, see, Nozomi's a very good educator. I would have written it over here, but what she did, where's the... So in Japanese writing, it captures the history in Japan of this character of teaching in all of them. So this is Buddhism, this is religion, and this is education. So the idea of teaching is present in all of them. Religion exists to teach, foster the people. And Buddhism exists to foster the people in teaching. And then education, the same. And this means literally to foster or to cultivate. So education is about teaching and fostering. And actually, Ikeda says, really the purpose of education is, do you want to write tomoni? Yeah, that kyoiku, maybe up here. This is my colleague from DePaul also. So Ikeda, who I'm going to talk about in just a second, says the purpose of education, kyoiku, is kyoiku, this idea that we foster each other together, the teacher and the student, the teacher and the taught, in any exchange, whether it's a parent and a child, brother and sister, a principal and their teacher, they're all doing this process of learning and cultivating together. That's really when education happens. So if the teacher goes into the classroom and just says, only I have the information, and I'm giving it, I'm downloading it from my brain to the student, then we're doing this one. We're focusing on teaching. But if the teacher goes into the classroom and says, I too am learning, I'm also developing, I need that student to bring their full self, their heart, their dreams, their goals, everything they are, to the process of growth, then we're doing real education, kyoiku. In Japanese, we call this, in English, we call this a homophone. Do you know this phrase in English, a homophone? Homo is same, and phone is sound. So they sound the same, kyoiku and kyoiku. But the character that Ikeda is using means together, rather than just teaching. So this is the way he's kind of defining the real essence of education. So if you take something away from today, I would say it's this. concept, that the real purpose is growing together. You growing and your students growing. By you growing from your students, from your engagement with your students. Even if they're tiny, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, they are still teaching you something. That's the point. They don't have to be an adult to teach you. And your heart should be open to learn from them. So this is a really key idea. So Ikeda's major educational philosophy is ningen kyoiku, human education. I don't know if, is it helpful to see these? Do you like these, seeing these in Chinese characters or no? Is that sort of interesting, right? In Spanish and in English, it's hard to tell the meaning of the word with letters. But in Japanese characters, you can often get a full essence of what that word is really trying to say. So Ikeda says human education. And he defines this in 2 ways, basically. The first way is that everybody is unique as an individual, as a human being. And that we should try to speak to that unique person, encourage them, and believe that every single person has unlimited potential for growth and becoming, no matter what, everyone. Whether they have learning disabilities, whether they are poor, whether they are female or male, gay or straight, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone has unique and unlimited potential to learn and grow and become. And we should actively try to foster that. That's one dimension of human education. The second part is that we have to remember, and this is almost a of course statement, we have to remember that we are human beings. We're not plants, we're not animals, we are human beings with a heart and wisdom and compassion. And as a species, are we really developing ourselves to the fullest capacity? So on the plane, I saw the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. You probably have not seen this. I'm much older than you, and I hadn't seen it. It came out in 1968 by the director Stanley Kubrick. Do you know Stanley Kubrick? Do you know this name? So I recommend this movie. The movie starts with like gorillas. You know, they're out and they're like gorillas and they have a bone, and it shows them being gorillas to finally using animal bones as tools. And they start beating other gorillas to have control over them. But the movie is really about space. It's called 2001, A Space Odyssey. So they're in outer space, and they're flying to Jupiter, the biggest planet. So it's a story about artificial intelligence. Are you thinking about AI? Are you thinking about this or not really? Do you say AI in Spanish too, AI? So the movie is an early movie about AI. And right now, computers can do many, many things that human beings can do. And it can do them much faster. And so at this time, we have to think about what is it that makes us uniquely human as a species? We created computers, but the fear is they may become even more powerful than us, making human beings not relevant anymore. This is the fear around AI. Of course, there's incredible power. Elon Musk and, creating a smart car and, can drive itself and, these kinds of things. So as human beings, the second part of Ikeda's human education is to awaken to the nature of ourselves as human beings. What does that mean in this one life that we have on earth? All of you are how old? 20 something? 24, 25? How old are you? 19, 20? How old are you? 18. 18. So you're like 18 to maybe 20 something. You lived a childhood and you have all the rest of your life. In that time, that limited time, how much are you going to expand your capacity to truly do something amazing with your life, in your family, with your children? That kind of awakening he's pushing us to keep in mind. So what it is to become human for him is 4 things. Kind of, there are more, but I think we can distill it into 4. So the first one, I would say, is global citizenship. For him, part of what it is to be human is to awaken to the fact that we live our lives in our own local community. You are maybe a resident of Guadalajara. That's sort of the 4 corners of your neighborhood. But then you're also Spanish. You live in the country of Spain. And so there are people in Barcelona that you may, share a country with, but you don't know. And people in Madrid, it's very close, but you don't know them. But you're all Spanish. Yes, we're Spanish. But then you're also on the, continent of Europe. It's like, we're not American. Definitely don't want to be American, Donald Trump and all of that. But we're European. But France is in Europe, and Germany's in Europe, but even Russia is in Europe. So you have shared identity, but also some differences. But then, if aliens came from outer space and either, were attacking the planet or embracing the planet, we might think, yes, we're all Earthlings. We all feel a sense, even now with the Americans, we are okay. We all share the planet. So your identity is at multiple levels. And Ikeda is encouraging us to remember that as human beings, we do know the people locally, but we also have to engage with the people around the world, because ultimately, in our difference, there is universality. We have a shared sense of what it is to be human. And he says the way to bring these out, he says many ways, but as a global citizen, kind of his most famous way is to develop our capacities of wisdom, which is knowledge through experience, courage, this capacity to move beyond fear, fear of difference, fear of otherness, and then compassion, to open our hearts to the sufferings of other people. This is how he defines a global citizen. And we enact that wisdom, courage, and compassion locally, nationally, regionally, and globally. That's sort of the first, okay? Global citizen. The second, I would say, is dialogue. That we do that through engaging people dialogically in conversation. So, have you ever had the experience where someone says something and you think, what an idiot? Have you ever thought that? Have you? You're smiling. Yeah, you must have, right? Yeah, many times you think, maybe you're thinking it right now. I don't know, maybe you're thinking of me. This guy's an idiot. But the way we break down thinking someone is an idiot, or someone is mean, or someone is, not kind, is actually to engage in dialogue. Why did you say that? What are you thinking? What are your experiences that make you think that? And really digging deeply into the heart of why they would say that. This, for Ikeda, is the main way to know something, is through dialogue. That's why my image is all of us engaging in conversation together. Very different from what we're doing right now. This is not sort of dialogue. The third, he says, is creative coexistence. So the first character of creative is this one, kyo. And then sei is life. And he says that by actively engaging with all phenomena, plants, animals, water, trees, everything in the environment, all the way up to the universe, we have to understand that our lives are connected, fundamentally connected. You cannot pull your life from everything else in the environment. How many of you believe that your life, your individual life, your 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old life is connected with the life of someone in my country, in the United States? How many of you believe that? Maybe one, maybe two. But if we think, how many of you have an iPhone or a smartphone? How many of you have a smartphone? You don't have a smartphone? You do. You just don't want to raise your hand? Yeah, I understand. If we think about the smartphone, where it comes from, how it's made, who makes it, who sells it, all of that comes from people in different parts of the world. Both the expensive parts, the minerals that make up the batteries, every dimension of it is attached to the life of someone else. For some people, they're just getting by trying to have a living to make those things. Others are forced to have them. Then there are people like Steve Jobs, who created Apple, who created the smartphone, who's making gobs and gobs of money as we live our life communicating with people on our smartphone, right? Checking Instagram or TikTok, or, as you dance on TikTok and do all your moves and then post it, and then you see all the next moves, right? That kind of, our life is connected. So if we're attentive to that, if we awaken to that, we can function in this way where we can do the fourth part. This is maybe the major contribution. This is value creation. Your university and my university created degree programs in value-creating approaches to education. This is what Alejandro meant when he said soka kyoiku, or soka approaches to education. Value creation. How many of you have heard this term before? 1, 2, 3. This is maybe Ikeda's and his people who came before him, Makiguchi and Toda. This is their unique contribution to education. And when we think about it together with all the other things I said, that makes them really important educators, that we teach their ideas. This is why. But value creation says, first, we cognize facticity, truth. There's truth in the world. COVID happened. How many of you remember COVID? You may have been in high school during COVID, or no? Learning through Zoom? Were you doing like Zoom or some kind of online learning? How many of you were doing that? Yeah. I was teaching. You were doing it. Okay. So first we cognize, we understand this facticity. Uh-oh, there is a virus through the breath, and if you get it, you become really sick, and many people were dying, especially in my country. And so we stopped being in public. We started wearing masks. We started educating through computers. For 3 years almost, we did this. But then the second part, after cognizing facticity, is to create value from it. Value just means creating new meaning in your life. And he defines this meaning 3 ways. The first is in terms of beauty. Beauty. Something looks good. It smells good. It sounds good. It tastes good. Through the senses, we design beauty. We understand beauty. The second is gain or profit or benefit. This is something that serves the entirety of yourself. And then the last part is good. It serves the social whole. So it's the same thing to the self, but on a quantitatively larger scale. Serves more people. So if we think about COVID, okay, we understand there's a virus. What value can we create from it? What new meaning can we create? The people at Zoom created value. They created an interface where we can talk to people, hear people, see people. We can have videos, we can show PowerPoint, we can do learning, and it's aesthetically or sensorially pleasing. And they made money, probably a lot of money, making that Zoom. And even though it had problems, many of us learned from that platform. We were able to do education around the world. Suddenly everyone. No one was doing Zoom, and then suddenly everyone was doing Zoom. It's a verb now. I Zoomed him. Let's Zoom. We'll make a Zoom call, right? Everyone knows it. That became real value created from a horrible, horrible virus. And there are many examples like that. So Ikeda and Makiguchi before him and Toda after and between them said when we cognize truth and create value from it, then no matter what happens in society, we always have possibility. We can always do something. And then the last part is what I want to end with. They said when we create value, we have the capacity for authentic or genuine happiness. And your educational program here is about happiness. Happiness for Makiguchi and Toda and Ikeda, Makiguchi, Toda, Ikeda, is not joy while learning. It's not smile on your face while you're learning. They like that. That's important. Little kiddos, we want them to have fun. We want them playing. But real happiness, genuine happiness, they say, is no matter when you have a problem or an obstacle or some challenge, COVID in life happens, do you have the capacity to confront it, to do something with it, to realize as a human being, among many human beings in the world, that I can do something with it. I can contribute to the betterment of others by doing something with it. That provides us real happiness. That is, for them, the purpose of human life. That is our purpose on this planet, is to repeatedly create happiness for ourselves and others. This is what it means to really awaken to the true nature of your life. And so as teachers, Ikeda would say, our goal is to foster young people through heart-to-heart, compassionate engagements around the world, through our engagements with all things in the universe, to foster that capacity. That is what it is to be and become fully, richly human. That's their approach. So I'll end there, and maybe you have some questions about something I said. And I think this is where you can ask anything, either about what I said or things you're thinking about. Let's maybe have a little bit of a dialogue in the remaining time. What time is it in your phone? 12:02. So that we've been talking with the presentation about an hour altogether. Maybe we can take some time to do question and answer, dialogue, engagement, things you like, things you didn't like, things that made sense, things that didn't make sense. Who would like to start? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Guillermo already did it. Yes, what is your name? I'm partially deaf in this ear, so I couldn't hear you. What is your name?
Marina.
Marina. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You talked about mind and heart. I didn't really understand that, but also I think about, is there anything, like any mention to body, meaning how we act? I mean, when I think about becoming a teacher, I think about promoting connecting with others, heart, helping them learn something, but also how to deal outside with people and situations, and that is more related to how we move or act, right?
It's a great question. And yes, the answer is yes. Ikeda talks about this. Much of Ikeda's thought comes from the 13th century, which is not old in Europe, but in the US it's quite old. Like, wow, 13th century. But it comes from the 13th century Buddhist reformer. His name is Nichiren. Goes by a single name, Nichiren. And he says that our behavior in the world is really what matters, right? Sort of our humanity is demonstrated by our behavior in the world. So it's exactly what you're saying, but behavior is action, and for Ikeda, action, thought, these are sort of elements of the same dimension. So our mind, our heart, and our physical action, all of these determine our humanity. So I think you're right. And heart, I mean, in English, we have two words, heart and mind is typically where we would say them, heart and mind. This organ doesn't feel, but in English we say the heart has kind of the emotional space, and the mind is the cognitive space, and then action is physical. In Spanish, you have two words, I'm guessing, just thinking about the language, right? Mind and heart, you have these two words. In Japanese, it's the same word, heart and mind. So in English, we split them. But in Japanese, kokoro, these are the same. So they'll say my mind. They'll point kind of here. So I think you're putting your finger, this is an English phrase, you're putting your finger on a key point. That mind, heart, body, these are all actually together, one thing, I think. That's good. Thank you, Marina. Other questions or comments? Yes. Guillermo's already a teacher. No, I got it, don't worry, you over here, he's directing.
So I think I have a question for you. I think one of the reasons that teachers maybe don't show happiness while they are teaching is because the long time they teach, like maybe 15 years. So how do you manage to stay as happy as the first year, or because I think it should be hard to stay the same at your first year of teaching I
know there's feedback.
Then 10 years explaining. So how do you manage to stay like explaining at the same at the first?
You guys are asking really thoughtful questions. You're thoughtful. You know, if education is about, we were actually talking about this in the car on the way here. We drove in from Madrid, so we had like a 40-minute car ride. And if teaching were just to get a paycheck, just to get money, if you treated it like, I don't know, what, I'm guessing you work. You must work, like in restaurants or something. Do you work or no? You don't work? Some of you work.
Yes.
So what do you do? What do you do for your job?
I work at a college.
At a college? Okay. So when I was going to school...
School. At a school.
At school. Okay. When I was in high school, I worked at a restaurant. And in college, I worked at a restaurant, and then I sold clothes at maybe the store is still around, Gap. Do you know this store? Gap and Banana Republic, the same company. I just sold clothes. I could care less. Do you want to buy it? Yes? No? I don't care. You know, I wasn't invested in whether people bought the clothes or didn't, because it was just a part-time job. But teaching is about engaging with human beings. These are living, breathing, thinking human beings with dreams and goals and aspirations. They maybe came to your class, some ate breakfast, some maybe didn't eat breakfast, some have parents who are really angry with them, some maybe don't have parents, some are maybe being raised by their grandparents. We have children in Chicago, where I live, in the United States. Some come, they don't, you know, their parents are not having them brush their teeth. They come in the winter, it's freezing, they don't have a jacket. So we're not just selling clothes. These are living people. And I think if you are constantly curious, who is this little person? It's a person. Who is this in front of me? What can I gain? What can I learn from them? If you're constantly curious, you will always be interested. And then there's real joy in learning because you're learning together. You're growing, fostering each other together. That's really what it means to educate. They're teaching you, you're teaching them. And at the end of the day, that experience, there's no greater experience than teaching. The moment when someone doesn't know something, and then you say to them, I don't know, you ask the right question, like, why, what happens if you do this and then this? And they think about it, and then they give you the answer. That, in English, we say, aha. Aha means like, when you realize, oh, aha, I get it, I understand. When you see that experience in some young person, that's an amazing experience. To be present when the mind realizes something. It's better than the money. We need money to live and eat and go out and, you know, you're probably not married yet, but at some point maybe you'll have a partner and maybe you have children and, you know, you need money to do that. But the interacting with human beings should be always full of curiosity. If you're curious, Guillermo, then you will always have joy, I think. Even when it's frustrating, even when that student is like a terrible, you know, their behavior is not good, there's still at the end, in totality, an amazing kind of experience there. So always stay curious, I would say. That's really important. And fun. Try to have fun, you know, while you're learning. I think that's important. Yes?
Question for you.
Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll pull it back.
Sure, I take this. At first, when you ask about bad teacher experience in the first part, related with all that you talk, you propose like a model where the matter is to create values, create things that raise from our experience and our authenticity as individuals, I suppose. And this is like you need an scenario, or I don't know, where it is like comfortable and where you could like reach your goals as you want. And I think that the base of this is a bidirectional way of learning between the teacher and the students, I suppose, and that's like the cycle that you propose, no?
Yeah.
So the tendency in our schools, and I don't know if in your country too, is to find these kind of teachers that don't assume this role of you can learn of your students, and you have like this experience with the problem of they don't find this part important. So how do you solve that part?
It's another great question. That's the reality in the United States too. The most teachers, I mean, just look at the way that this room is for a different purpose. The purpose of this room is that someone is going to give a talk and people are going to listen, and you know that's the nature. But classrooms in the United States is the exact same setup. There's one mind in the front And then everyone's just learning. Yeah, tell me, tell me. So we have to move the tables around, and we have to really encourage. It goes back to your question about behavior. If I'm understanding your question correctly, our task in schools of education or colleges of education is to foster the kind of teacher who has a heart, who believes that they can learn something from the student. And the forces, there's a very neoliberal, do you know this word, neoliberal? Mm-hmm. There's a very neoliberal agenda. It's not a deliberate agenda. I don't think it's a conscious agenda. I think it just happens by living in a kind of neoliberal world.
And it just has like goals, no?
Yeah, so we just kind of mass produce things. We mass produce cars, we mass produce clothes. We're not stitching our own shirt, you know? What are you doing? I'm making my shirt. No, we just go to the store and buy one, and we ruin it, we go buy another one. So teaching has become kind of the same process. We think we just mass produce. If I just tell everyone the same information, and then I measure it, you all have the same standard. You all have to meet here. And if you don't, well, that's too bad. Some fall, some are successful, and those who are successful win, and those who aren't lose, and that's life. That's kind of the approach. But Ikeda, I feel like this degree you're making, and probably education, is to push against that. To say, actually, no, that's not the approach. We have to find teachers who believe that they can learn something from the student. The student is still developing, but they have much to offer. And same with the teacher. The teacher has a lot of experience and a lot of sort of professional knowledge. But there should be an expectation for growth, for development. And I think when we get into the classroom, you have a choice. Ultimately, you have a choice. Teaching is very hard in the United States because teachers are often, I don't know how it is here in Spain, but you know, there are 50 states in the United States, and each state is different. In some states, they publish teachers' students' scores. They publish them, and then they hold the teachers accountable. If students pass, then the teacher is good. If they didn't, teacher is bad, and then they can lose their job. This is extreme cases. But when you close the door to your classroom, you're the only teacher in there, right? It's just you and your students. So you can choose. How do you engage with the student? Do you feel I'm going to gain something? I'm going to engage in dialogue and learn the knowledge that way? Or do you just talk at the students and then measure? So I think ultimately that's the professional dimension of being a teacher. What kind of teacher are you? There's a mistaken view, at least in the United States, that anyone can teach. Yes, we can teach anyone to teach, but there are really good teachers, and there are really bad teachers, and there's kind of people in between. We really want to find the good ones, the ones who somehow can really pull out of even the worst student some capacity for growth. We mentioned Makiguchi, Ikeda, and Toda. Toda is in between them. He was Ikeda's teacher. His focus was on how to help the lowest performing students, those who really have difficulty. His approach was, how do we develop them? So I think if our intention is there, what is your name?
Elena.
Elena. So if our intention is there, then we can become that kind of teacher. Ultimately, it's your own attitude. What's your own development? And that goes to Guillermo's question about how do you constantly have hope? If every day you go in with that attitude, then every day it's going to be that kind of exchange.
But, sorry if I...
No, go ahead.
The ones that continue that tendency, knowing that they could do another things, and they continue with this like pattern that they show, it's just a matter of doesn't concern about this type of questions. And like you, when you were in your first job, that you don't concern it because
right.
you don't have like
Yeah.
any connection with this, you don't have passion or whatever you want to name it, or it's just, as you said, that is too related education with economy, politics, and this kind of thing. It's more related with simply doesn't concern about it, or just how the world goes.
I mean, my view is that we can talk about sort of the field in an abstract kind of way. But day in and day out, you're an individual. So when I'm teaching, I try to encourage the teacher who's going to be in the class how to behave. Yes, we should be concerned about everybody else, but ultimately, what is our own action? And if we are a slave to politics, to all these external forces, then we're, in a sense, kind of giving up. So I think it's really hard work to be a teacher. It's the most fulfilling work, but it's really hard work. Because often parents can be against you, society can be against you, politics can be against you, money is often against you. There's all these things that would tell you, go do something else. And some people stay, but only do kind of substandard work. They're not really being the best teacher. But you, Elena, you have to be the absolute best you can be. You can't give in. You can't give up if you're going to be a teacher. I think you will respond better and your students will respond better. Just like we said at the beginning, when Guillermo said, I had horrible teachers. We've all had horrible teachers. And most hands went up when we said we had a great teacher. It's probably the great teacher that made you want to be a teacher. Right? The good ones are like, that person changed my life. My life is different because of that person. And we know it. We often go to their classroom before school, after school. We hang out with them. They're like a human being. That's the kind of person you have to be, no matter what everybody else is doing. That, I think, if you keep focusing that way, your students will know. And they will talk. Elena, great teacher. So-and-so, not so great. And they'll respond that way. I think the proof is in the student's response. But that's an unchanging formula. I think it's always going to be the case. Like most things, there's good, bad, and really exceptional. Strive to be really exceptional as a teacher, but also as a human being. And I think your students will respond. Maybe, do we have time maybe for one more or no? Yeah, maybe one more? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So, my question is related to the previous topic, and it is how can we encourage the students in order to develop their critical thinking and not having the fear of failure, because it is something that but some of us have in our classrooms, even we are adults. So what can we do in order to help them to participate in class or to share their opinions or ideas without that fear?
What do you think? How would you answer your own question?
Like showing them that it is okay, kind of.
That what's okay? Say more. That
Like,
what is okay?
I don't know, like we should express that nothing happens if you provoke a mistake, or that everyone is going to value their opinions, their ideas, and we all can learn about it.
Yeah.
Something like
I
that.
agree. I completely agree. And I think so much of it goes back to the very first question about behavior. So most of you, as my understanding, you will be early childhood and elementary school teachers. Is that correct? I was a high school teacher. So they're, young adults. But by that point, all their creativity had been removed from bad teachers that didn't show them how to be creative and didn't show them that it's okay to take chances. In the university, when I'm working with students like you, I say to students, the creative space, actually I call it the organic development of ideas. That's the kind of most interesting space that we can inhabit as human beings. Think about the time you learned something that you remember. Someone was probably showing you, physically showing you, and allowed you to try it, even if you made mistakes. And because you made mistakes, you were learning from it. It can be something simple like learning to tie your shoe to something really maybe more difficult, learning to fish or learning to ride a bicycle, or somebody showed you, allowed you to try it, nurtured you, supported you, and then they encouraged you as you were continuing it. That's a good educational model, and it can be anything like that. At some point, though, we became really bad at remembering that that's how people learn. And then we just thought, if we just tell them and just keep telling them, then that's how they learn. But that's not really how human beings learn best. So I think if you foster, you cultivate that capacity by showing them how to be curious, how to be creative, then I think they will demonstrate that in return. The second part, I think, is always asking why questions. Why do you ask that?
Because it is something that I've seen in my experience and in the classroom in general. So.
And then why do you think our responding to that is important?
Because maybe you've seen some students expressing that, and I don't know, like you may have the opportunity to help them in some way.
So much of our question and answering in education are questions, like bad teaching, typically, is questions for which we already know the answer. We are just confirming if the student is going to give me the answer I want. That's one kind of question. Sometimes that's important for diagnostic. Do the students understand, and can we move forward? But real questioning is to find out what we don't know. So if you ask students questions that way, like, what does this mean for you? Why might this be important? Why might we take value in Ikeda's approach to education? If I ask you that question versus, what does Ikeda call his approach to education? Whether you remember that it's ningen kyoiku, human education, value creation, maybe that doesn't matter, but why it might matter for students to do it, maybe that's the bigger question. But I'm really curious if you think that's important. So I could ask you questions that way. We were in Japan. I took my wife to Japan. That's my wife sitting on the end there. We took students to Japan, high school students. And we started visiting all these temples and shrines in Japan. And I asked one student, what is spirituality? Do you know this English word, spirituality? And he really struggled to be able to explain this in Japanese. And then when he gave his response, my next response was another question. Are you spiritual? Oh my gosh, that was another hard question. Oh, am I spiritual? I don't know if I'm spiritual. How do you define it? Then we asked, where do you feel more spiritual? In nature or inside a building? So this was a sort of essay or a lesson about the human engagement with what is sort of the deeper dimensions of human being and becoming. But I wasn't looking for a single answer. I didn't have an answer in mind. I really wanted to know their answer. So I think if you genuinely ask genuine questions, that will reach a different part of the student. Those questions can be based on the material we're all learning, though. That's the cognition of facticity. Do we all have the understanding of the material? Then from it, can we create value? Can we create value individually, and can we create value collectively, together? That's a completely different kind of engagement. And it brings the whole person to the lesson. That's what Ikeda is encouraging us to do. So your question is a very good one. So far, all 4 of these questions have been excellent. Okay, you maybe look tired of listening to me, and so we'll end. Let me thank you for listening very politely for more than an hour and for giving me the opportunity to meet with you. I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you as well. We don't have these experiences so often. And as you know, we are recording, so this is a really great resource for us that we will be able to use with other generation of students. Anna and me, we are lecturing, well, I don't know if you know, we have a subject that is called Educational for Happiness. And it is based, above all, in Soka education and in the work of Daisaku Ikeda and Suneseburo Makiguchi, among other influences. But it's probably the most important part of it. But we are in educational psychology, and I think you just introduced several topics that I hope that you are familiar with in developmental psychology, and right now with Anna in educational psychology as well. So I hope that you found interesting and inspiring this moment that we have to meet Jason and Suomi. Thank you. Thank you again for coming here to visit us, to meet us here. And I want to finish giving the microphone to Anna because, anyway, we are in her class. Right now, her class, it's not my class, I am also invited here in some way. So, Anna, please, finish you.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. Jason, it was very interesting to listen to you. I recommend you to read again the chapter, Growth is the Goal, because I'm sure that you are going to make more connections now that you have listened Jason's speech. That is also connected with all the first module that we are developing in educational psychology, connected with the purpose of education. And this question that I usually ask you is, what kind of teacher do you want to be? What do you want to do in your classes? How do you want to, well, I mean, what kind of environment do you want to create in your classes? What kind of relationships do you want to create with your students? How you are going to motivate your students to learn? I think that all these questions that we usually ask in educational psychology are connected with the speech of Jason. So thank you very much for inspiring us. And they usually, in this subject, in educational psychology, they usually write about what they, what they are trying, what they are reflecting or what they are learning. So I suggest you to reflect about what you have learned today, what you have thought today about all these ideas related to the work of Daisaku Ikeda, that also was a very inspiring figure for us in the Institute of Education in Alcalá. Thank you very much, Jason, for inspiring us.